I think we should talk about loyalty and allegiance and stuff. I never liked the idea that you can't criticize a manager who has won a lot in the past. You know,
Oh,
I
that's ridiculous.
you know, I think you can appreciate but also look ahead and understand that everything is cyclical. The players matter in the team. It really depends on, just you can't command the locker room the same way year in year out in the same way you did initially. Managers decline, players decline. I don't think Zidane is declining, but I'm just saying a change of scenery is not necessarily the worst thing. I also, I never, so yeah, I never bought into this idea that you can't criticize. Maybe criticize not even the right word. Just analyze. Just analyze what's happening, good and bad. It's all analysis. It's not favoritism. It's not bias. But I do think some people, and unfortunately, a lot of people actually. It's not just some. And I don't really think there's anyone listening to this podcast and on the patrons who actually fall into this trap. Not that we've seen anyway, and if they do, they're hush hush about it. But the ones who we hear from are not like this. But there is a tendency for fans to be not fans of the team, but fans of a figure or a player.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
see this a lot with certain players, and we don't need to necessarily mention which player those are. We can kind of see the discourse, right? Of like, if
yeah,
you love a certain player, it means you have to put down every single player who competes with that player in that position.
yeah,
And it's to the point where you don't even care if Real Madrid do well or not. Did my favorite player succeed? Great. I was right. If he didn't succeed, it's the fault of the manager who didn't put this player in position to succeed, or he benched him for this player who
yeah,
I don't like. And Zidane is kind of the same. Zidane is a kind of a guy or a figure who has those fans of like, if it didn't go well, it's because the opponent made it difficult for us. It's because we had injuries and all that stuff. So I just think like there is blind loyalty everywhere. And we
yeah.
just have to try our best not to let that cloud our judgment of what's actually happening. Ian brings up a great point, Lucas, where he says winning, he didn't say winning in particular, but just this loyalty can slowly breed complacency and stagnation. Literally, the hardest thing in football is to sustain winning. Winning itself is hard to sustain, and if you win, that actually is a barrier to winning more because there's stagnation, there is complacency, there is the fact that players who helped you win the title will move on because they realize they're good enough, so they want to go start elsewhere.
Yeah.
The hunger, you lose the hunger, and then there's the other case of like the scouting report comes out so teams can defend you better in the next season. All that stuff is so difficult to sustain, and I want to circle to a great Cesc Fabregas quote that I actually came across, I think a couple of weeks ago, where he said like there was a period of Barcelona where they were undefeated. Like I can't remember what the number was. They just wouldn't lose. It was an insane number of constant wins or undefeated run, and then they lost one, and they lost another one. Then like in the span of 5 games, it was like the equivalent of what they had dropped points in like the previous like 2 years or
Yeah.
something. And he was saying, you can't explain it. It's just that when you win so much, you forget what it's like to lose, and then you don't remember what it's like to pick yourself back up again. So all that, so that's why I think like just because you win a lot doesn't mean you have to stay true to that. You just have to constantly evolve. The way Pep says, like football is an animal. You have to control it differently, and sometimes something works, sometimes it doesn't. You have to constantly evolve. You can't stay the same, otherwise you're screwed.